Welcome to the Count Macula Show. I am Count Macula. In this episode, I would like to pay tribute and pay respects to the singer of the band Warrant from the 80s and 90s, Jani Lane. Jani Lane passed away last week at the age of 47 in a motel room in Los Angeles. Jani Lane was the lead singer of the band Warrant, which was big in the late 80s and early 90s. Warrant was one of the top four hair metal bands of that era. That era was a big era as far as rock music, from pretty much all of the 80s to the first part of the 90s, where the rock music genre only had hair metal bands or glam metal bands, so they pretty much were the standard at that time. Then around, let's say about 91, when you had Nirvana and Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden come out with their albums, it pretty much wiped out all the hair metal bands. They became a thing of the past. Not only did they become a thing of the past, but they became made fun of. They became a mockery because it wasn't about musicianship with them. It was about the image, and the songs were not deep. They were considered to be shallow as compared with the grunge era, where they were talking about more deep subjects. I would say there were four bands I think that were really good, and then you had these secondary bands that weren't good, and that's what pretty much made the whole genre weaker. You had Motley Crue, Poison, Rat, and Warrant were, I think, the top four of that genre. But I would like to say, back in the 90s, I actually listened to Warrant. They were the only one of that hair metal era that I would actually listen to, because I believe the musicianship was really good. Jani Lane was actually a songwriter, and he wrote most of the songs. And looking back on it, hindsight is 2020, you wouldn't think that there was actually good musicianship coming back from those days, but there actually was, compared to now, where in the rock genre, bands now don't make their own solid albums. Like, there's no concept albums, there's no, from the first track to the last track, there's no cohesiveness, there's just singles. The way the record industry is now, you have the iTunes world where you just download one song and the record companies don't put it on the bands to make a full solid album. So even though the hair metal bands were made fun of a lot, you had great albums back then, even though, like I said, it's looked at as being cheesy. But Warrant were actually a good band. If you take away the tight spandex pants and the high 2-foot-tall Aquanet hair, they were actually, underneath that, there was some good songwriting. Their first album was Dirty, Rotten, Filthy, Stinking Rich, which I still have the CD from the 90s, which is a great album. It's solid songs on there. 32 Pennies and a song called Heaven, which is their biggest ballad on the album. Then you had their next album after that came out in 1990, Cherry Pie, which is probably their biggest hit. But they have Uncle Tom's Cabin and I Saw Red, which are very good songs also. So Warrant were actually they had made solid albums, and they were actually good. If you minus the imagery, it's like fine wine. It ages with age. It gets better with age. So this was dedicated to Jani Lane. He was a great musician, great artist, and even though a lot of people might make fun of the the glam rock era, there were great musicians, and he was one of them. Rest in peace, Jani Lane. This has been another episode of the Count Macula Show. Please hit the subscribe button, and I will see you soon. Cheers.